we have here the participation of Laura Pirro, Finnish soprano. And during the symposium Sources of Creativity from Local to Universal in Mikkeli, Finland, we gathered together and we performed this music that is derived from a picture and from also this technique developed by Brazilian composer Heitor Villa-Lobos, the melody of the mountain technique. So from that, we started developing some melodies, and also there is a poetry that I will show at the end. So the first poem is in Portuguese, and then it was translated into English, and finally into Finnish. So Laura Pirro did this translation. So we are crossing this boundaries of arts, between visual arts and then a literature, poems, and then music. And with all that, we have three persons, Elisa, Laura, and I, and we brought this achievement. So I will show to you guys I will show to you guys oh, it's not changing.
Is it? I mean the airport.
Yeah, can we put now? Then
This one?
no, I would like to go minimize and then show the video.
Okay, I can do that.
Please.
It's this one.
Probably, yeah. You need to check the audio. The video is important if you could. I will ask you to start.
Share sound. You haven't shared the sound.
Okay. Okay, could you please put back to the
Yeah.
presentation? Thank you. So, I cannot change. Can you change it?
I can change it.
Thank you. Here you have the lyric in Finnish, maybe last and I will ask you once again, please. So, once again, I don't know why yeah.
Okay.
So this is the painting, one of the where everything started. So the first stage is the photograph, and also Elisa and I going to the Andes hiking and experience all the senses and memories from those places. We spent 15 days. We went from Peru to Bolivia. We read José María Arguedas, that is a novelist, a very important ethnomusicologist, and also from the cultural perspective from Peru, cultural heritage. So he's very important for the country and their heritage. And so we read this novel from him that would happen in the same region that we climbed and tracked. And so from that, we also went to the high altitudes in Andes, above 4,500 meters. And then each day we would hike to a different peak with a pinhole. And so all this experience, and also when we went back, we had this vivid memories from all this experience that we lived. And then we choose the images, and from that on, Elisa, aside, she developed several paintings and woodcrafts also. So she produced lots of art by herself. And then in my as my work, I would work on 10 pictures and develop the outline of the melodies from Villa-Lobos compositional technique. So after that, she introduced the poem, and we have the poem, if you could. So this picture is a part of what came from this experience in the Andes, and also I would like to ask you to move. Yes, one more, please. Yes. So you have here the lyrics. It is not challenging to reach the mountain in the snowy top of the cliff, the pleasant lack of air. Wind of silence, whistle the steps, the stones sing for the birds that are flying over the high mountains. When I find old images from the time of the flatland. Não é difícil alcançar as montanhas no alto nevado do monte, a suave falta de ar. Silêncio de vento, assobiam os passos, as pedras cantam pelos pássaros que sobrevoam as altas montanhas, onde encontro imagens antigas do tempo na planície. So we went backwards from the final performance and to the roots of this creative process. And this, unfortunately, this is that I have just this performance to show, but also I have other recordings from the Middle Sky, Chácara do Céu. It's also a song that it's the second song of this cycle that refers to a place in Rio de Janeiro. It's a hill there. The lyric brings topics such as beauty, mystery, chant, and birds. it refers to a woman that can sing better than birds, and with that plot, she can seduce anyone. So that's the second song. And then we have the third, Caximerta, two C's. The poetry is written by, it's originally written in Finnish, and we have Laura Piro, the soprano. It's now not just translating, but giving her own words about her experience in true poetry. So it's kind of unique, this process, and I would like to share this with you guys. And from that on, I have, we performed last year in Galeria Estação, 7 songs with Mônica Salmazo and Henrique Menezes, and great players of Brazilian musicians. So we performed in the opening of this exhibition in Galeria Estação. We recorded, I have those performances as well. And there's from 2018 to now around 15, 20 songs in that were developed by me and Elisa. So I just would like to bring to you guys this, this creative process that I'm dealing with, and by sharing that, I'm open to some commentaries. If not, I end here my presentation. Okay, with the time, I'm okay.
Yes, perfect. You would like
Thank you
to.
very much. So thank you very much, Rodrigo, for the wonderful presentation. Very exciting theme that has a lot to teach us about the compositional process. It's not just the comparative study. There is also the genesis of a piece of art, a work of art, and there are so many questions about this process that we could propose. Because we are so late, I think we should leave the questions to the end.
Okay.
And now, as we had decided before, I think we should go to Luis's presentation, and then we go back to the order. I have seen that Danielle is logged in.
Yes.
So after Luis's presentation, we will listen to Danielle's presentation and then to Grace's presentation.
Hello, my research is about an instrument that we have in Brazil, the Brazilian fiddle that we call rabeca, and I will talk about the resignification of written pattern known as dactylic foot in Greek, that the resignification of this metric foot in the rabeca plane. So what shall we do here? Yeah, okay. Mersenne in the Harmonia Universalis tell us about the dactylic metric foot together with the rhythmopoeia, the invention of the invention through the written patterns. And so the dactylic is this pattern of the proportion 2:1. And also we can find in Mattheson, the Vorkommene Kapellmeister. He talks about rhythmopoeia also, this kind of the part of rhetoric that talks about the invention, and the rhythmic poeia, according to Mattheson, would be this pattern of rhythm. So he teaches us that there is two kinds of tactile rhythm. The one in proportion 2-to-1, like this ta, ti ta ta, ti ta ta, ti ta ta, and the other one is in the proportion 3-1-2, also one long and two shorts, but the two shorts are not equal. So that would be ta, ta di, ta, ta di, ta, ta di. So we have this particularity of the dactyl rhythm that Matheson explains, that is not comes from poetry, but from musical reason. That he says here that we cannot do this kind of dactyl rhythm in the poetry, but well in music. And then we can find in a lot of 17th century music the dactyl rhythm, like in Johannes Passion, Bach, Johannes Passion, in the Turba choir, like an hypotyposis matter of signifying the anger and the velocity and what was called by Monteverde as concitato style. So Bach used the dactyl like this, kreuzige, kreuzige, kreuzige. So, and he did a huge choir with this rhythm, all with this pattern, and also in the singing, as we can see here, the accent of the long note is emphasized by the jumps. Kreuzige, kreuzige, kreuzige. So this is also a melodic way of treating the dactyl. So, and then we find a very nice example in Bieber's violin music, in mystery sonatas. The same thing in the 10th sonata that is about the crucifixion. And so we have this written in 6/8, right? Tan, taran, tan, taran, tan, taran, tan, like Matheson said before. And this is in Bieber, this dactyl rhythm is exactly what Matheson says in the well voorkomende Kapellmeister, that it's instrumental thing. So not poetry, but it's instrumental. This is exactly what Bieber did. So that that means that this kind of invention through the dactyl pattern, the rhythmopoeia of dactyl, was very, very common and very used in this context of religious music and also instrumental music after this, meaning always this agitation and war-like things. So, and about war-like things, Monteverde show us in the Combattimento di Tancredi Clorinda exactly the same thing, and he used the dactyl rhythm in the singer, the tenor, telling about the war affetto, affetti, and in the instruments, in the violins and violas and cello, there is the famous division of the semi-breve in 16th notes. That means according to Monteverde, was the kind of ira, meaning the concitato style itself, that imitates then the percussion, the war drums. So that's why, and talking about war drums, we can find also in Monteverdi, in the Madrigali Guerrieri Amorosi, the dactyl, like Guerre mil stato, this is the pure, let's say, the dactyl that is there is an intensification of this dactyl in the other voice, like here, the soprano take the half of this dactyl, ta 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 ta, so ta 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 ta, and then the violins also another division, ta 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 ta, and then this intensification goes through ta 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 ta. So this all meaning this affect of war, and then we can find in Tonois Arbo, that was the main dance source of 16th century, and he talks about the dactyl rhythm also in the ways of playing the tambour, the war tambour. And so he did a kind of tablatura thing that he calls tablatura of the tambour, with the variations of dactyl. And then we saw, and we can see also in Tonois Arbo, the drum and the position of the drum, very similar to the position of the fiddle player. If we see the right arm here, it's the same position of playing. This is very important to what we will see in the Rebecca playing, that the bow is a kind of drum stick and not a melodic stick. And so we see also very clear in Tonois Arbo the relation with the marching of soldiers and this dactyl rhythm. And there's a marvelous citation here of the disciple of the dialogue between Arbo and the Capriol, and that Capriol says that it's very the rhythm, the drum rhythm, when well established, well played, is very pleasant. So this kind of means also this proportion thing, that the dactyl must be in a very proportionate ratio. So, and then this association with violin playing with dance music is very clear in 16th and 17th century, as we can see in John Playford, the dance master, with all the violins, but the violins in the breast position. That's very important to us, because we will see all the Rebecca players also plays a kind of 16th and 17th century position of playing, this kind of breast position. So this is we can suppose that this was the pattern position of violin playing at that time, and not the old one, the shoulder position. This was the dance position, and also we can see in other methods and other pictures like this. This is as half of 17th century. The Dutch painter Gerrit Dou, that shows exactly the violin playing, and also the tail here, the right hand taking the bow with the thumb under the hair. So not in the Italian position, modern one like this, but like really above a drumstick, like this, but here. So this is, it seems to be just a small detail, but it's very important to the spatial motor thinking of Bowie. Then we can see here all pictures of fiddle players that and the similarity with the drumming. Let's see, this is the tarol, and here the Luiz Paixão, a great player, Rebecca player from Recife. And here a very interesting picture that as a 19th century rabequeiro, Fabião das Queimadas, Rio Grande do Norte, also with the breast position and the tongue under her position. And we arrived then to the modernists, Brazilian modernists, Mário de Andrade, that went to Rio Grande do Norte and Pernambuco and Paraíba to listen and notate all the popular artists he could listen to, and his work is well documented in Instituto de Estudos Brasileiros, USP, and also in the books published by his former collaborator, Oneida Alvarenga. And so this research of Mario is what I research. I go to Mario's source and what he notated, and I found that there are a lot of dactyl written in the Rebecca dance music. So these are all notated here, and all this Mario learned from a very good Rebecca player from that time, Vilemão Trindade. He described Vilemão with these words here, like an excellent musician, and that varied a lot his melodies. And resuming what he said was that he made a lot of variation of what he played as basic dance, and this was based on dactyl rhythmopoeia. This is all the dactyl written down, and this is the transcription, and we can find this. I will play some of them to you later. And what is important here is that with the Rebecca, we can make this a kind of disconstruction of this rhythm. Like this is the normal dactyl rhythm that I call the division, like tonal arbor thinking. But the dactyl rhythm, the resignification of this dactyl is exactly this, but not like in the division thinking, but in the additive thinking. So we take this 8 pulse, not 4 and 4, but 3, 3, 2. And this would sound like this. It's very, when we play this in the instrument, it's very clear, because we have this in the, let's say, tonal arbor division thing. Tambour-like thing, and in Rebecca playing, this would be with the accent of down bows. So we have here that characterize this ritmopoeia of baianos. Então, so, and one particular thing that is interesting, that this, like all timeline patterns that we learned from Agavu and Niketia and Kubik, the ethnomusicologist that wrote about that, this timeline is a circle thing. It's not the thinking is not about to measure, but cyclic thing. And this as cyclic matter, we can rotate it. So we can, I show here, this pattern, this rhythm pattern can appear also with or in the other example in the right and then we go further and we see this how it appear in this biennial here, very four measures, and how this would be played with the I call this the clave pattern. It's a clave, it's a Cuban clave, known as tresillo. So this would be so very if you play with the drums, that would be makes it very clear that in the instrument, this pattern has a very clear phenomenological approach of the thing, not abstract. So, and then we find the other patterns. This one, for instance, this other biennial that has this kind of like Andrade said before, they are all variation of the same pattern, the rhythmic pattern and melodic pattern. So the other example here is this one. This can also can happen that we can find the long note with ligature like this. So, and this, of course, I am transposing all the examples in this beautiful scordatura that is a major chord. So this scordatura tuning also teach us that this melodies is all fits in this open string scordatura. So when we have this one that I will show here is a very interesting example because we can find a 3/8, like Andrade notated, 3/8 in a dance that would be binary. So how we can deal with this in this pattern of dactyl pattern. So the dactyl is exactly here, the create da da di da di da do pa di pa di pa di pa di da do da di da. So we have the famous emiola like pattern that's very common in 17th century and 16th century, the early Chacona dance. So we have here the famous Chacona from Vihicorda, the Orfeo, the dance. Sorry. So exactly the same thing that Andrade listened the Rabequeiro, Vilemão, Trindade playing, but he notated everything in 3/8. He could not suppose that this is also dactyl. So this would sound like this. So we have it. So, and then we arrive in another very nice thing that we can think about the medicine relation with the dactyl in 2/1 and the dactyl ternary. So this proportion of Matheson happens in a cocoa that it's a kind of improvising words, improvisation of words, but here it's a cocoa with intermezzo, instrumental intermezzo played by the Rebecca. So this also we can see here the original notation of Andrade, and here the transcription. So da di da 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 ya da ya da da ya da 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 ya da la ya da 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 ya da 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 di da da. And this nice kinary thing in the 2/4, and here the 6/8. So this 6/8, if we start it like Andrade notated with accent on the pa pa pa, this would sound like this. Long and long, and then we arrive to the end. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Luis, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. We certainly have lots of questions to present in the end of the presentation today. Okay.
Okay.
And let's see. Okay. So now we are passing on to the presentation of our colleagues who are online. So according to the program, now Daniel will make his presentation. Yes.
Okay.
He's already online.
I will make him co-host.
So Daniel comes from the Federal University of Paraná. He's going to present his research on topics, especially topics used by Villa-Lobos. Correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, please.
Yeah, that's it. Can you hear me well?
So I think he needs some time to connect.
We cannot.
Is he already in conditions to present?
Can you hear me?
Let me see. Can you speak, Daniel? I think we cannot listen to you. Let me check.
Can you hear me?
On talking.
Are you listening?
We can
Yes,
try to
I'm
see what's
listening,
going
Daniel.
on, okay?
Okay.
Eu tô te ouvindo, mas eu acho que eles não.
Acho que eles não, né? Can you hear me, guys? There in Barcelona?
Probably something to switch him.
Are you?
Talking. Let me see.
I believe my sounds okay. Well, can you hear me, guys? Hello? Are you hearing me? Can you hear me? Hello? Som, tu acha que eles te ouvem?
Eu acho que não.
Também não, né? Acho que é lá alguma coisa na conexão deles, né? da caixa de som.
We cannot listen to you.
Hello?
But
Hello?
maybe
I'd
something.
like to suggest that Clayson talk to Clayson in case you can, so that he can verify if there is a problem specifically with Daniel's audio or if it's a more general issue. Could you, Clayson, please?
Yes. I guess it's a problem in the Barcelona. Can you hear me? I'm talking.
Tu tem chat aí, Som?
Não, eles desabilitaram.
If Clayson is talking and you cannot hear him, it's probably.
Deixa eu mandar uma mensagem
We
para
have been able to
o
listen to
Ricardo.
the video music.
Yes,
So,
we have.
it should be a problem with your microphone.
Or maybe with the authorizations, I believe, if they have the authorization to.
I made them co-host. So
Clayson, please sing something for us.
Olá. Hello. Are you listening?
He's in mute mode, isn't it? No?
ask to unmute.
Hello.
Okay,
Hello.
let me see.
Can you hear me?
They are.
No.
So he's verifying now your permission,
Yeah.
guys. Daniel and
Okay.
Son.
Yes.
Tu tem o contato do Ricardo
Eu vou
lá?
mandar uma mensagem pro Ricardo. Não sei se ele vai conseguir ouvir aqui. Ricardo, a gente está ouvindo um ao outro aqui, mas vocês não ouvem a gente.
Oi? Ok.
Deveria.
Eu e o Daniel, a gente consegue se ouvir aqui, ouvir vocês, mas vocês não conseguem ouvir a
Clayson, I'm
gente.
taking a look at your message right now.
Ricardo, a gente está ouvindo um outro aqui, mas vocês não ouvem a gente.
So
Eu e o Daniel, a gente consegue se ouvir aqui, ouvir vocês, mas vocês não conseguem ouvir.
No oímos a los que intentan hacer la presentación online.
¿Están desde este ordenador?
Sí,
los dos se escuchan.
ellos escuchan a
Ellos
nosotros,
se escuchan.
pero
Ellos
nosotros
escuchan
no los oímos a
también,
ellos.
Pero nosotros no los escuchamos.
Se minimiza. Mira, ¿ves? Si ellos hablan, sí que
Sí,
detecta
se
la
ve.
entrada. Los he
Sí.
hecho co-host.
Provavelmente é alguma configuração de saída deles lá.
É.
Y aquí. Y antes
Para
se
un
escuchaba.
encaminado,
¿Has tenido
¿no?
alguna?
Antes hemos puesto un vídeo, no, pero hemos puesto un vídeo desde este ordenador y sonaba por ahí sin problema.
Y no tenemos ningún técnico, ¿no?
Y ellos se escuchan entre ellos.
Entre ellos sí.
Entre ellos
Vale.
se escuchan.
Yo no sé.
Vale.
Sí, ellos se escuchan
En
también.
principio está conectado.
Pues
Debería funcionar.
a ver, un momento, vamos a hacer una prueba. El altavoz funciona.
Y desde aquí de las opciones de Zoom,
¿Dónde están?
ah,
He mirado.
Oi, nos ouvem?
Isso. Queria que você tentasse.
Oi? Isso
Ellos no clasificación ellos. Aquí. Ya, no, nada, ¿no? No, porque es como opciones individuales, pero.
Alô?
Espera. Sí.
Ah, es que está puesto. ¿Altavoces?
Ah, ahora.
Nos ouvem?
Sí.
escuchamos ahora.
Venga, gracias.
Ah, very good. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Danielle,
Yes.
thank you very much. We can hear you now, finally. And just let's give the technician some minutes.
Yes, I made you co-host, so you should be able to share your presentation, right?
So now we
Sim.
Danielle.
Yeah,
Can you see me, my presentation?
perfect.
Yes, exactly, we can.
Okay. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear us well?
Yes, we hear you clearly.
So just one more minute so that he can fix
Okay.
up the last technical issues.
Okay. Let's see. Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Danielle, so welcome to our presentation in the International Congress on Musical Signification. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Danielle's work on the usage of topics by Villa-Lobos, especially in the tropical forest topic. So I leave further explanations with Danielle himself. Please, Danielle, will you please go on? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Good afternoon for those who are in Barcelona. To us in Brazil, it's good morning. And my name is Daniel Zanella dos Santos. I'm doctor in musicology by Universidade Federal do Paraná, and I'm professor at Instituto Federal Catarinense here in Brazil, southern Brazil. Although I couldn't be there with you in Barcelona, I'm very happy to be here this morning in Brazil, this afternoon in Spain. I'll read my presentation, so it's more, I think, due to the time restrictions, I'll be more faster. In this presentation, I'll share with you a part of the research I did during my PhD, in which I studied musical Indianism in the symphonic poems of the Brazilian composer Heitor Villa-Lobos. Villa-Lobos, born 1887, died in 1959, is the best-known Brazilian classical music composer of all time. He began his composition career in the first decade of the 20th century, mainly influenced by French Impressionism and Richard Wagner. During the 1920s, he turned to Brazilian nationalist modernism, of which he became its main exponent. It was during this period that the composer developed his nationalist aesthetic, closely related to primitivism, to which he incorporated elements of Indianist representation and Brazilian popular culture. It's from this period his well-known cycle of choros. From the 1930s onwards, Villa-Lobos incorporated elements of neoclassicism, demonstrating the influence of Bach and produced his Bachianas Brasileiras. His catalog of works has more than 1,000 compositions, including several symphonic poems composed throughout all his compositional phases. 6 of his symphonic poems present themes related to the indigenous universe. A frequent aspect of his work is the association of this indigenous universe with the tropical forest landscape. The landscape of the forest, especially the Amazon, is a frequent theme in Villa-Lobos' works, in his own speech and also in the musical criticism about him. Programmatic reference to the forest in his works appear in titles or subtitles. as in the piano piece Saudade das Selvas Brasileiras, translated roughly as Missing the Brazilian Forests from 1927, in the suite Descobrimento do Brasil, Discovery of Brazil, from 1937, in the orchestral opening Alvorada na Floresta Tropical, Dawn in the Tropical Forest, from 1953, and the symphonic poem Floresta do Amazonas, Amazon Forest, from 1958. And also found in the programs of the symphonic poems Uirapuru and Amazonas, both from 1917, Erosão, or Erosion, from 1950, Rudá, from 1951, and Mandussarará, from 1940. The composer's discourse also brings an abundance of associations with Brazilian nature. In an article produced in Rio de Janeiro newspaper Diário de Notícias in 1951, Villa-Lobos states, "I'm a Brazilian, descendant of Indians from Brazil, and I have never had foreign teachers. What I studied was in our rivers, in our forests, and in our folkloric areas." During his second stay in Paris in 1926, stories began to emerge about the alleged trips that Villa-Lobos would have made through Brazil's countryside, especially in the Amazon, to collect folkloric and indigenous material. The development of this intimate relationship with Brazilian nature would be, according to the composer's discourse, related to the immersion provided by these research trips. Music criticism also brings a series of descriptions about the associations of Villa-Lobos music with nature. The important French music critic Henri Prunière gives a detailed description of the images evoked by Villa-Lobos music. With these works, one has the impression of discovering a new musical world. They do not give us the impression of transporting to a more ardent sky images of France or Germany, but they evoke, with a magical power of suggestion, the impenetrable virgin forest of mysterious noises, the immense plains, the great rivers, all those landscapes that few Europeans know, but they willingly try to imagine it as a kind of terrestrial paradise where fascinating butterflies and birds flutter around, where the ground is covered with strange and magnificent forests. Villa-Lobos brought with him to Paris the soul of virgin forest. We are in the presence of a force of nature, a cyclone, a volcanic eruption, and we are as disturbed by the hearing as by the cataclysm spectacle. The Carioca newspaper Correio da Manhã quotes in an article from 1949 an unidentified music critic from the French newspaper Le Monde, who comments on the choros, stating that the composer is capable of making us feel the intoxicating perfume of the tropical forest, violently pulling from our midst to transport us so far in an instant. The columnist Nestor Victor from the newspaper Correio da Manhã in 1928 writes, "But what makes us most proud of him is this. Although the Brazilian young man is not self-taught, although it seems to European criticism that he owes much to Debussy's influence and that Stravinsky was the one who revealed it to himself, the same criticism finds that the lyricism of Mr. Villa-Lobos is something absolutely unique, because it drags the auditorium into the middle of the immense tropical forest." Arnaldo Estrela, in 1970, in his analysis of Villa-Lobos string quartets, cites the images of nature induced by his music. We feel impelled to see, in his music, the telluric appeals, the suggestions of wild nature, terrifying forests, river seas, unmeasured waterfalls of that chapter of Genesis that was not written, in the phrase sculpted by the genius of Euclides da Cunha. Wild nature and primitive men from the sertões have their musical counterpart in the art of Villa-Lobos. Tom Jobim, in a 1987 manuscript, also demonstrates this perception of the representation of nature in Villa-Lobos' music, speaking specifically of Chorus No. 10. One day later, an album appeared at my house, Foreign, from Chorus No. 10, conducted by Maestro Werner Jensen, a symphonic piece with mixed choir and erudite work. When the record started to play, I started to cry. There was everything. My beloved forest, the birds, the animals, the Indians, the rivers, the winds, in short, Brazil. The Amazon rainforest ended up becoming part of Villa-Lobos' image also in his representations created for the general public, as showing the tribute paid to the composer by the Brazilian government when stamping him on the 500 cruzados bill that circulated in the country between 1986 and 1990. On the obverse of the bill is shown is shown a portrait of Villa-Lobos with a background of water lilies, these plants here, a typical plant of the Amazon, and an excerpt from the first page of the score of Irapuru's piano reduction in the background. On the back, the composer is shown conducting with his tailcoat and baton in front of a typical scenario of the Amazon forest, with a river and a dense forest of tropical trees in the background. In this presentation, I will discuss a musical structure that appears in several works by the composer, including all of his Indianese symphonic poems, and which is the main vehicle for representing the forest in Villa-Lobos music. I consider this structure a musical topic that I call tropical forest. This term was initially suggested in the studies of topics in Villa-Lobos by Piedade in 2009 as a universe of topics through which wild and animal topics permeate. Moreira, 2010, also talks about the sounds of the forest in Villa-Lobos music, in this case, as musical textures that provide ambience to the Indian within the words, but not as a musical topic in itself. The limited space granted by the two aforementioned authors to the question of the sounds of nature as topics in its fullness is a reflection of the preference of Brazilian musicology for elements of meaning of social-cultural origin, such as folkloric or ethnic musical traditions. Elements of nature have had limited space in studies of meaning in music, generally appearing as examples of pictorialism, as in Leonard Ratner's seminal work. A parallel can be drawn between this attitude and the discussions of nationalism that developed in the 1920s onwards in Brazil, when, from Mário de Andrade, a culturalist vision was established as a paradigm of nationalism, tributary to Silvio Romero, of identification of work and popular materials for the creation of national music to the detriment of natural and geographical aspects. Since then, identification of musicalities as proposed by Piedade, has been the focus of studies on meaning in music and has remained a primary factor in studies on musical topics. According to Peircean semiotics, the tropical forest topic is largely based on iconic relationships. However, as we will see later, index relationships are also established. Its general structure, that is, the set of characteristics that defines it as a type, is formed by three structural layers. The first layer is formed by an easily recognizable melody, usually on a solo instrument, but which may vary in orchestration throughout the passage. This melody can have iconic elements, such as features of imitation of bird songs, or indexical, such as melodies with primitivist features based on indigenous songs used by the composer. The second layer is formed by melodic or harmonic fragments that imitate the sounds of forest animals. These fragments are often quite independent of each other and vary in character from one work to the next, but may contain common elements such as staccati, appoggiaturas, and trills, short rhythms, and a wide variety of registers, metric positions, and instrumentation. The third layer is characterized by undulating bass sounds, usually in the form of ostinati or sustained sounds, sometimes added by some higher sounds, also in the form of ostinati or sustained. To illustrate the archetype of the tropical forest topic, we'll use a passage from Uirapuru as an example. It's a symphonic poem, namely bars 134 to 142. As it is in an emblematic passage of the topic in question. This is a reduction of the passage with the main elements highlighted. I'll try to play this passage to you. Tell me if you can't listen, please.
No, we cannot hear.
You can't hear?
No.
Let me see. Let me play in another way.
You have to allow us to listen when you're.
How do I do that?
Yes, there is a permission.
Quando-
Could you please orient him with respect to that?
Quando você compartilha, tem habilitar som.
Aqui. Here. Okay.
Thank you, Clayson.
Okay. I'm not used to Zoom meetings. Sorry, guys.
No problem.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The excerpt begins at bar 134 with the third layer, a bass ostinato here on piano and bass. The harmonic content of this layer is summarized in the set 3-3, a member of the octatonic genre, a subset that resonates from the octatonic chord at bar 134, which ends the previous section. The rhythmic pattern is in 16th notes, gives a ternary grouping within a simple quaternary measure. Although the extremely low register associated with weak dynamics, legato articulation, and piano pedal obfuscate the perception of rhythm, transforming the layer into a low undulating sound mass. This low and continuous undulation, periodically broken by the suppression of a note from the ostinato, can be understood as the swaying of the river's waters, in a tributary analogy to the composition method created by Villa-Lobos called Melodia das Montanhas. According to this method, a geographic profile, be it the skyline of a city or the design of mountains, can be transformed into the melodic profile of a composition. The second layer begins at bar 135 here, with melodic fragments, whose harmonic ambience created by all the elements falls within the set 9/8 whole tones genre. With regard to pitches, there are two behavioral patterns to the melodic fragments in this layer: static fragments built on a note, and as in the case of the oboe, piano, violin, and English horn, and fragments built on trichords, as in the xylophone. Aspects of rhythm and metrics, articulation, register, and instrumentation confer a strong degree of independence between the elements in this layer. This whole environment of fragments independent of each other due to asymmetrical rhythm, timbres, and of different families, space in the register, and short sounds with different articulations is a resource of imitation of the forest animals, set of noises, such as birds and insects. It is difficult to associate with any of the noise with any specific animal, but by referring to the listener to the chaos caused by the noise of forest animals, the musical fragments created by Villa-Lobos establish a semiotic relationships of the iconic type, according to Christian theory. This iconic relationship established because the fragments, through the musical resources described above, resemble the noises created by animals, although they do not imitate them in a defined and accurate way. The legend told in Waipuru's program helps to mitigate this lack of precision. The search for, here's an excerpt of the program. The search for the elos of Uirapuru by the natives is witnessed by all members of the nocturnal animal and insect kingdoms: fireflies, crickets, owls, enchanted frogs and bats, and creeping things. The text becomes part of the aesthetic appreciation of the listener and directs him to the field of forest noises. This iconic association between musical fragments and animal noises, mediated by the works program, unfolds in a ramification of meaning of the index type. As Monell 2000 states, it is possible for a musical syntagma to signify iconically an object with which itself functions indexically in a given case. The noises of animals imitated in the musical fragments of Villa-Lobos usually occur in the forest and are situated in the rainforest by the argument of the work, the program. Thus, the object animals, iconically represented by its noises, becomes an index of the rainforest. The first layer comprises the melody, in bar 136, which is the main theme of the work, played on the solo flute. This melody was taken by Villa-Lobos from a 1908 book by botanist Richard Spruce, in which it appeared as a transcription of an Uirapuru song, but it has no resemblance to the actual song of a bird of this species. Villa-Lobos uses a series of iconic resources to characterize this melody as a bird song: high register, use of the flute's timbre, fragmentation of the melody, and rhythmic irregularities. This type of construction fits in what Salles, 2018, defines as a style oiseau topic. On the other hand, the harmonic content set 735 white key scale does not contribute to the representation of a bird song. Among all the musical elements analyzed, we can see that none of them iconically refers to the Amazon rainforest in a specific way. No Amazonian bird song is literally imitated, as shown in the melody, which uses generic elements of birdsong imitation, and sounds of other typically Amazonian animals cannot be identified either. In a musical criticism from 1920s, Henri Prunière associates certain elements of Villa-Lobos' early musical primitivism, specifically in Noneto, 1923, here, to Stravinsky's aesthetic, but with the specificity of referring to Brazilian geography. Here's the critic. The arrangement of the instruments of the first bars is almost identical to the structure of Sacre du Printemps. The same use of the bassoon in high notes, the same response in the flute. However, as the Sacre gives us a prehistoric and, so to speak, glacial impression, the Noneto drags us through the immense tropical forest. The resource used by Villa-Lobos to specify the Amazon as a setting in Uirapuru is extra musical. It's present in the program. The specificity of the work's title and the text direct the listeners to a field of meanings associated with the Amazon, forest, and the Indians. A characteristic procedure of programmatic works. Music critic Olin Downs, in an article in the New York Times in 1945, explains his understanding of the association between the program and the music in Uirapuru. The program is enough for the composer to portray Brazilian nature and its colors and sounds. To intersperse these passages with the music of savage dances, the flute cells of the Uirapuru's enemy, and outbursts of sensual song. It may be said of Villa-Lobos' scoring that in places one sings as well as hears the forest, sees the play of light, is aware of the tropical night and its strange enchantment. In his Indianist symphonic poems, the composer uses a musical language common to international primitivist modernism, as Prunière perceives in the aforementioned criticism of Noneto, albeit with an individualized technique, bringing the nationalist argument in the program and in the titles, which allows associating this musical language to the landscape of the Brazilian Indian and to propose a new meaning to the musical elements. Vera Mixnick mentions paradox created by the device. The problem of integrating music and program contains a paradox. First, whatever form it takes, the program amounts to an imposition on the listener of the composer's particular extra-musical interpretation of the music, and thus limits musical perception. In other words, by proposing a unique way of hearing the work, the composer of such a piece denies one of the most important qualities of music, its ability to signify by itself to various people in multifarious ways. Programmatic music is especially useful in the function of resignifying musical elements, often internationally shared primitivism, and worked within an individualized technique to become part of a specific nationalist language. Music and text differ in the degree to which they can specify narratively, for while text has the ability to describe items such as characters, settings, actions, and verb tenses in detail, in music these elements are difficult to determine. Precisely because of this difference between the narratological properties of the program and the music, composers put parts of the program into music, operating by selection, through the use of expressive genres available historically. In Villa-Lobos' case, he had an international primitivist set of tools previously used by the Impressionists and Stravinsky, for example, with different meanings from different parts of the world, which he could work within his technique and his nationalist aesthetic conception. It is within this context that he creates the topical first topic, as a need to create a musical structure that could represent the typical Brazilian landscape within the international modernist language of his work. And thank you very much for listening to me so far. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for this very exciting presentation. There are so many things we would like to ask you about in your fascinating research, absolutely. Unfortunately, we are very pressured by time right now because actually we should be in the interval at this exact time, and there is a presentation of Eero Tarasti in 30 minutes. So I will ask our colleague Clayson to come immediately in case he can. First of all, I'd like to present you to our colleague Clayson Melo, who he's a professor in Universidade Federal de Campina Grande, Federal University of Campina Grande, Paraíba, Brazil. He's a former pupil of Eero Tarasti. And is it okay there, Clayson?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I will leave the rest of the presentation with Clayson himself so that we don't waste our time. Clayson, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. And my name is Clayson as well. I will not talk more about this nationalism and modernism and Villa-Lobos because Daniel gave us a great presentation about this one, and I think I can keep it very fast right now. And I may consider that the many studies about the identity and the nationalism aspects, but in the way to develop this Brazilian soul. It's kind of project in this modernism concepts in Brazil. But I'm just consider a very specific way of the identity construction is grounded on the cultural self-description. It's a theory about, by Fontanilli and Zilbenberg about two different categories of culture. It's a screening and mixed culture. The screening is the first system that's considered as exclusion system. It's deal with the continuity. And the mixed culture is deal with the discontinuity. It's a kind of system of inclusion. And it's very similar to the next theory I will present you. But in this way to understand what kind of sentiment I'm talking about, the imagetic construction of Brazil as a social culture or a nation, for example, it's based on a very specific sentiment as a trace of culture. And for that, I will present to you very shortly Heitor Villa-Lobos. Heitor Villa-Lobos is, for me, it's one of the greats and the creative Brazilian composers of this 20th century music. And probably Villa-Lobos has a kind of project of develop this, what I call Brazilianness. As a project in this modernism attitude of the Brazilian music, Villa-Lobos used it to create its own tradition or some specific compositional dialogues and compositional narratives that created diverse and several realities. And for this, I have this quotation about Ana Luisa Almeida, that culture and identity are interrelated and interdependent as far as need one another as a source of signification. And this quotation is very particular because we put this in the way to understand that one of the particular sentiment of this construction of the Brazilianness probably would be this, the sense of belonging. And I may consider that these values developing this construction is as a cultural traces are representative in this construction of the Brazilianness, run into this interrelationship between the culture and identity. And for that, I need to use this Tarasti's model just to put the sentimental in the input of this model and sometimes at the output of this model. We can understand more about I will cross many theories to understand how sentiment could come through this model and goes to the Villa-Lobos strategies. And for that, I have one more theory about the anthropology of the imaginary by Gilbert Durand. Two different orders or two different systems, very similar to Fontanille. It's the diurnal system. It's a very exclusive exclusion of the system. Is probably we can understand this as this or that. It's the opposition. And the nocturnal system, it's the horizontality of the images. And we have inclusion systems like this mixed culture, this and that at the same time. And for understanding this, how I needed this sentimental, I needed myth as a kind of memory. If we put this music in this universe of the myth and the memory, we can think in music as activity. You are not forbidden, for example, to stop the music and you can continue hear the music or thinking about music. It's very important. And probably we are asking what kind of sentiment Villa-Lobos is talking about all the time, especially in Choro's 8. He's used to say that the keynote of this choro is the sentiment. Villa-Lobos used to say that Brasilia is made by heart, is made for this great sentiment of belonging, this grateful to be Brazilian and something like this. And probably when he is talking about this sentiment, he's talking about this, the recompose Brazil in a very different ways, like reinvent, reconstruct, recreate something. And now I will present you Saudade, the sentiment of missing, lonely, nostalgic sentiment. And this quotation is very important to understand this saudade, but I will give you more tips during this presentation. Saudade is the highest and the lowest feeling, the image of absent. The image appears in the dreaming and fled through the dream. The drama of the heart suffer, a thing that could have been and was not. However, the absent is in the ensure of the first image. The feeling of saudade becomes a deformed image and recreated in another one. The sentiment is likely first within the base whole matter. It's how we can understand in the Brazilian way, saudade is very paradox. We have the love and suffer. We have the pain and the happiness. For example, we have the sadness and the happiness at the same time. It's very paradoxical. You can laugh and you can cry at the same saudade. It's very paradoxical, but it's very present in the Brazilian way. And for that, to analyze this saudade as a sentiment, I should put in the problematization, but in Joaquim Ramos, that saudade could be interpreted, it could be viewed as a sentiment expression phenomenon, and goes through the model of Tarasti, the Z model. We have these 4 points. MUA 1, we have the place of intention. MUA 2, place of expression, the belonging sense. Place of speech, this stimulus of the search of knowledge, for example, the extra musical aspect. And finally, we have the place of phenomenon, the whole saudade work in this paradoxical way as a very clear phenomenon. The whole narrative discourse, the compositionality. And put the saudade in these semiotic ways, consider the culture of self-description, for example. some aspects of identity construction. It's very present in the construction of the belonging sense. And this sentimental in developing or in building this sonorous Brazil, we should consider this quotation, tropical sadness. It's a kind of a word by Graça Aranha, a very important writer, Brazilian one, that described that Brazilian is very sentimental. All the Brazilians has this tropical sadness. It's a kind of Brazilian sensibility that I'm calling saudade. Saudade as a cultural trait, value, identity, it's a place of existence. Its function, it works just like a sentimental filter that I will put this through the Tarasti model. And it brings to us a very specific view about the construction of Brasília Saudade. Is very plural, it's not singular, it's not very linear, but it's inclusive and exclusive at the same time. I will show you in the model in a few minutes. And as place of memory, we need memory to have saudade. The identity is in the way, probably one important way that subjects recognize themselves on another identity elements, belonging, narrative, construction, signification, representative, and so on. And finally, we have this Z model based on the theories, and we have these 4 modalities, we have these 4 places of impetus, belonging, and so on, and we have the inclusion and the exclusion system at the same time, that we can put saudade goes through this model. We have this and that, this or that, in this or in that, or in this and in that. It's very specific just to understand how it can works. Finally, I'm going through this first example about Bachiana's number 5, the first movement, composed in 1938. We have a very specific group formation here with 4 15th notes, but you can see that it's not started as the first step, the first time. It is very specific and very characteristic to the rhythm for Villa-Lobos, and we have this the movement ascendant in the first. This is a reduction for piano, but it's a cellos, 80 cellos playing this part. We have this arco at the lowest cello and pizzicatos at the middle. And we have this different movement. It's a kind of strategy to give this dramatic way. It's very, very sound, very caipira, very people from the count side. And very specific for us, Brazilian. Let's hear a little bit. As you can hear, it's very dramatical. There is many nostalgic aspects in the melody, for example. But we have very distinctive rhythm here, for example, in the lowest cello. Pam, 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 pa, 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 pa. It's very, very Brazilian, very specific. And we have more forward, some specific here, ta, 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 ta. It's very particular, but during this, the audition, it's very mixed in different layers. It's a very strategic approach of Villa-Lobos to mix this layer at the same time. You can hear the music as a whole, but different melodies at the same time. It's very dramatical. It's very sentimental. There is a very memorable feeling of saudade, or something that you can feel in this music. For example, I miss something that I really don't know what it is, but I miss something. And this is the only baquianas with lyrics. And I will just highlight to this specific part of the music, the silence of the birds. And I will play a little bit that you can hear right now here with this, how nostalgic this one is. Let's see. You can hear it's very religious, something like this. It's very sentimental at the same time. It's very respectful of the sentiment. There is this paradoxical way when the lyrics say that the cruel saudade that louds and cry. You can laugh, you can cry at the same time. It's very paradoxical, but it's very sentimental. There is a very strategic rhythm, descent movement, the linearity of this melody. It's very part of this sentimental narrative of Villa-Lobos. And finally, I'm going through this chorus 8, but why Villa-Lobos call this chorus at dense chorus? It's very chaos at the start time of this chorus. Let's hear a little bit. First of all, I have to put this in this chorus, putting this at the, if I can put this, I can use the Z model in the output of Villa-Lobos. Now we can think in saudade, consider these compositional attitudes. It's present, these attitudes of sentiment is process which sustain the Villa-Lobos music, for example. And I have this place of speech, memory, creation. We have this impetus, intention, wanting, the desire to compose the Brazilian sound, the reality, this inclusive aspect. And let's hear a little bit. Why probably Villa-Lobos is straighting these choros at dancing? Villa-Lobos has a memory about the carnival groups. And he revived this carnival in the 40s, the 1940s, named Saudade do Cordão. It's a very specific carnival group, and he developed this mask, instruments, and something like this, and probably it is very represented in these choros. That is because Villa-Lobos is called Choros 8 dancing. This is a picture of our rehearsal in the 1940s. And let's hear a little bit this choros. Very like chaos or something like this, but you can hear this instrument, the caracachá. It's very specific instrument that is conducting a linear line in the percussion, but there is many different melodies, different times, rhythms, and something like chaos. You can hear this, probably the agglomeration of the group of this carnival just before the parade or something like this. Instruments, pitching instruments and check sound all the time. This chaos is represented at the carnival, but let's see what caracachá is. a very specific instrument in maracatu, for example. And this line is very linear, this 16th notes. And it's work like a conducting or kind of maestro that put order in this pseudo chaos. And we have this entrance of different instruments in the whole pieces. This first part, we have the oboe, strings, trumpet, English horn, and so on. It's very specific how chaos works with this linearity. And one more, I have this rhythm of agogô playing maracatu. Is very specific rhythm from the northeast of Brazil, for example. And probably Villa-Lobos is trying to give us this aspect of this sentiment of remembrance of maracatu in choro. Let's hear this maracatu rhythm in the bassoon, for example. It's very clear that this rhythm of maracatu. And finally, the last example, I will present you some aspects of Villa-Lobos used not only in Choros 8, but in several works. That it is a presentation of the indigenous. It's a kind of topics or something like this remembrance, the representation of the nature. Probably in Villa-Lobos, nature is a source. Source of sentiment, source of memories like this. Let's hear this representation of indigenous. So, this is the reference for this presentation. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, delaying Tarasti's keynote.
Yes.
20 minutes.
So how much time do we still have? It's 5:24.
We will start Eros at 6 o'clock. We can use 10 minutes.
Okay, so I try to be very brief. So first of all, thank you very much for your presentation, Clay. So it's absolutely fascinating to discuss Villa-Lobos and to search for the topics that you and Danielle are researching, so that we can identify these musical elements that bring this effect of meaning of Brazilianness or of some more specific topics like the tropical forest or the Indian feeling. And so, well, first of all, I'd like to ask our colleagues that are present if they have any questions. Maybe Luis, you too. Would you like to present some questions to everybody that has presented, except for Rodrigo, who's not present for the moment, so it doesn't make any sense.
Está em português, você pega em inglês. É interessante a construção das melodias do Villa-Lobos. A gente percebe que ele utiliza muitos elementos populares, por exemplo, como agogô. Dentro dessa estrutura, ele vai utilizar muitos outros elementos. Eles entendem português.
Eles entendem, perfeito.
Maravilha mesmo. Dentro de toda essa estrutura, vai ser todas as músicas dele ou existem particularidades para as músicas específicas que ele vai utilizar esses elementos da cultura popular dentro da estrutura musical clássica, como a gente viu agora, em vez de utilizar o instrumento, o agogô, ele fez a sonoridade a partir de outros instrumentos compostos na orquestra.
So I will translate because I believe that the Congress wants to keep a register of these presentations and share these registers afterwards with our colleagues. So just translating very briefly Cicilo's question. So I'd like to ask the two of you who presented works related to Villa-Lobos, if the usage of some kind of topics that come from popular tradition in Brazil, from our orality and popular music, if they are accidental in Villa-Lobos music, or if they can be considered systematically, even idiomatic to Villa-Lobos. Would you like to present the question to both of them, or just one of them specifically?
Sim, pode ser. Sim.
Para os dois, né?
Sim.
So the question is for the both of you. Maybe Daniel, could you please start?
Of course. Nice question. I believe that it's very common in his work. Other authors like Cássio Piedade have worked on this, and it's not just common, but it's a model. We can see the influence of his way of approaching Brazilian popular music. Even in my case, my studies focus on indigenous representations. But we can see him as a model for other composers that came after him, like Marlos Nobre and lots of others prominent composers in Brazil. We see all through his work and all through his career. There's a biographical problem that's discussed about Villa-Lobos, that when he first went to Paris in 1923 to live there and to show his works there, there is a part of the biographer that say that Villa-Lobos started to pay attention to national styles and incorporating in his music national elements like popular music and Indian music, just after he went to Paris and discovered primitivism and Stravinsky and things like that. But we see clearly in early compositions elements like choro, the use of choro as an instrument of signification. Maybe not in the sense of radical nationalism, but he was listening to the music around him and using it from very early in his compositional career.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So, Clayson, could you please complement his observations?
Yes, thank you. Probably we can find this popular aspect in several works of Villa-Lobos, including the string quartets, for example. We can hear this tamborim topic, for example. It's a percussion, it's a Brazilian one, an instrument of percussion, very specific for samba. There is many rhythms of this used in samba, in strings. The strings quartet is very formal, very classical form, but there is Bachiana's number 2, for example. We have the saxophone with many popular melodies. In choros we have this agogô citation.
Clayson, you are frozen. I don't know if you can hear us right now. We have some communication issues. I tried
No, it's okay.
Is it back?
Yes.
Okay, so you're back, Clayson.
Yes. Yeah, back. Thank you.
Could you please repeat, because we could not hear you.
Okay, at the end I was just talking about this. It's very present in Villa-Lobos, these popular aspects, those popular elements like very topic specific, samba, tamborim, agogô, maracatu is very present. In Bachianas number 2, for example, the saxophone, the treatment of the saxophone. In Choros 8 as well, we have this treatment of the very popular sound in saxophone, for example.
Great, thank you very much, Grace. It's interesting because we can see that there is a whole work of topic identification in Brazilian music that it is still to be done, because we have some pioneers like Acácio, for example, who has started a big discussion about this issue, but the identification of the specific elements is still a work to be done, and it will take some generations for us to do that. I always like to take as a reference Kofi Agao's work, not only about classical music, in which he is an authority, but especially about African music, in that he is really a deity, and he will really detail every element of the percussion. So he makes a thorough research on African music that can really be a fantastic model for us to deal with our own music in Brazil. So I'd like to present some questions. Rodrigo is not here, but I have a question to Luis here, and also actually I would have a question for each one of you, but I'm afraid that we may run out of time. So I will start with Luis. Luis, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation on the Rabeca. And the main question I'd like to propose to you is related to the traditional usage of the dactylos as an element associated with the meaning, with a feeling of militariness, of belligerence. And you have showed to us the changes in the physical elements related to the dactylos reading, which was fascinating. For example, your presentation of how dactylos in the execution of the Rabeca can be related with the baião rhythmical cell is absolutely brilliant. It must be published. It's something very, very quintessential for Brazilian music, especially Northeastern Brazilian music. And now I'd like to ask you about the changes in meaning. So, if the dactylos are so deeply related with this military flavor that comes from the Iliad, from the great epopeas from antiquity, and comes even to Brazilian songs like Marcha Soldado, Cabeça de Papel. So it's still a dactylos. What happened to the body? And now, quoting our colleague Clayson, we could use Eero Tarasti's semiotics to ask how the change in the body of the dactylos will change the identity, the habits, and ultimately the Weltanschauung, the worldview related to the execution of that specific rhythmical cell. Could you please enlighten us about that?
That's a very great question. And this is really the sense of the thing. When we read in Matheson about dactylos, he says something similar, that the dactylos is from this tradition from the war matters, but it is also from joyful happiness, and he gives us two kinds of different affetti of the dactylos. So there is already there in the 16th century this dual affective sense of dactyls. And we see, for instance, in Tonarbo, the dances that he teach us there, for instance, the Bransley, that is the same as a gavotte, is not warlike, but it's dance matter. So, and then is where he put the fiddle player that plays Bransley, plays the suite of the Bransley. So with the dactyl, so there's dactyls and variation of this rhythm. And so I think in the Habeca music, what happens is that the gesture of playing and we can read in Agavo, for instance, that the sense of African music is the emula, the emula written, the 3 and the 2, the superposition of 3 and 2, but not only the superposition, also the dialogical, not only the super the polyrhythms, but also when you in an article that Agavo talked about the structural rhythm and cultural, talking about the standard pattern, the vasi or the clave, that is ta 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 ta. So this is a succession of 2 3 2 2 3 2 3 2 2 3, and we have in the Baião 3 3 2 3 3 2, and that modification we can make it very easy with the bow. If we treat the bow as a drumstick, not melodic, not an Italian device, but a rhythm device. And that for me, the more important transformation is that the bow should be managed as a rhythm device to play this thing. And if we listen to Habequeiros and Habeca play in general, they use the bow as a rhythm clave marker. That is the sense of this. You have always the clave in the pandero or in the tambourine or in the agogo. So that's the clave is the rhythm poeia of this Brazilian African music, the Afro-Brazilian music. Is I think, and this for the bow, when we change the position from violin to Habeca, that's changed automatically because you are playing the Habeca like the drum player, like here and not here. So we can associate of the rational thing. When you play melodies, we are more to the head, and here you are more to the heart and to the, also because we can we can see the Habequeiros playing the Cavalo Marinho. They dance also. They play here. If you put the Habeca here, you cannot dance. That is it's a kind of so that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Luis.
Thank you.
Do we still have time?
We should end because in 10
We should
minutes,
end.
in 10 minutes, Eero Tarasti's speech starts.
Okay, so, well, we'll still have some questions, naturally, but as we had a delay, an important delay, we should interrupt right now. So I'd like to thank you for your participation, all of you, Rodrigo, Luis, Clayson, Danielle, thank you very much for your presence here today. And we will keep in touch to continue this discussion remotely too, okay? So I'd like to finish the session today